Hi everyone, this is Steve Barrett, Editor-in-Chief of PRWeek. We're on Facebook Live, about to record our weekly podcast, the PR Week. We're here with our usual stellar crew. We've got a great guest this week, Joe Cohen, newly arrived at Axis. Hi Joe. And Frank Washkuch, our news editor. So please do add some comments. Hope you can hear us properly. Sorry about the glitches over the last couple of weeks, but do let us have some comments, questions, feedback on the podcast and what we're doing. This isn't a broadcast, so it's not a TV program. This is a behind-the-scenes Facebook Live broadcast, and we will start recording the podcast nowish. So let's get on with it. Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PRWeek's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PRWeek, going to guide you gently through the next 20 minutes with our fantastic guests this week, who are Joe Cohen, who was at Kind Snacks when we booked you for this, Joe, but now you're at Axis Capital. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. So we're going to get into that, talk about your new role and some of the big topics of the week. And we've got Frank Washkuch here, our news editor extraordinaire. Frank, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks for having me on.
Are you still living the PR Week dream?
Of course.
Are you cooking on gas?
Yeah.
Are you painting word pictures?
All of the above.
Thank you, good to know. Yeah, Frank's been holding the fort because I've been away. Nobody's really noticed, have they, to be honest? But yeah, and I'm away again next week, so Frank's in the van. So what are we going to talk about? Well, there was a debate on Monday. You may have noticed that. We'll talk it through from a communications point of view, and the Skittles tweet that followed on from that. Some really high-profile pitches that we broke the stories of the results, HP and GM, the latest in a series of GM pitches, so we'll talk about those. And we'll talk about Mike Fernandez, fantastic PR pro, formerly at Cargill. He's landed at a new job. We'll catch up with Mike and anything else that catches our attention over the next few minutes. So Joe, let's talk to you a bit. You've moved from Kind Snacks. You had 15 years at MWW on the agency side, a couple of years at Kind, really interesting company, doing very well and establishing itself. And now you've moved over to Axis Capital. So firstly, tell us a little bit about the new company, the new role, and what attracted you to move over from the sort of consumer side into financial services.
Yeah, so Steve, what's something that is a trend that you and I have spoken about in the past that is interesting, and it's I think it could be a little bit of a game changer in the industry, is that within the financial services sector, there's an increasing appetite for individuals and executives who have experience in brand marketing and who are brand storytellers, or whatever phrase you want to use. So just even before accepting the Axis opportunity and joining the team at Axis, I had begun to see trends in the industry through my past role as chair at PRSA, and just also keeping tabs on where people were moving and what was out in the marketplace, that more and more brands in banking, finance, insurance were interested in playing in that space. And it's interesting because if you go back 20 years ago, you had a lot of professionals in the communications industry who were generalists. Then what you began to see more and more of were people who were in highly specialized roles. And it makes sense because when you look at the media environment, you have such a segmented media environment, and there's a need to have people who have that depth of experience. And there were always specialists, but became more and more so. So now what's interesting is, I think partly because of social media, and partly because of just increased competition, because we've been going through a tough market for the past couple of years, you have more and more brands that wouldn't be looking for, more and more financial companies that wouldn't be looking for brand marketing, who are looking to play in the space.
So they brought you on as a CCO, but they also brought on a CMO at the same time. Is that the first time they've had those roles in the company?
Yeah, so with Axis, I mean, part of what attracted me to Axis is, one, it's just a great company, and I think in addition to loving the people who I interacted and loving the culture, I saw that it was a company that within the insurance space, which is going through this period of massive transformation because there's been an influx of third-party capital, there's new areas of emerging risks such as cyber and pandemics and climate change Axis is a company that's in this mid-sized space where they're a global player, 31 offices, 1,300 employees. So you have a big, sophisticated global company, but they're also really mid-sized compared to some of the other entities there. So they have the nimbleness to move faster and seize upon trends. So they were looking to elevate their brand presence, and what they did exactly what you said. They created, they brought in myself and Michiko Kurahashi, who's coming in at the same time as Chief Marketing Officer, to launch an integrated brand communications function, which Axis has never had a CMO or a senior PR person before, or I should say really brand communications executive before. So we're coming in to essentially build that function and help tell the Axis Capital story to the marketplace.
Are there any similarities with the Kind Snacks task? Because you came in at a fairly early stage there, didn't you? Were you building the team there too, or were you kind of building on an existing structure more there?
Well, Kind had a lot of momentum when I joined. They were, I mean, the company really was, I mean, I felt privileged to have been there during a period of just explosive growth that began before I joined. And then, you know, during my period there, I was a part of a great team that was helping to grow the company. And I just want to say, Kind is a fantastic company. Daniel Lubetsky, who's the CEO, remains a great friend, a mentor to me. With Kind also, one of the similarities is in the snack food space, there was a tremendous amount of transformation. People were looking for healthy snacks, and Kind was a pioneer in that area and helped really drive forward an entire category. The analogy is I see that same opportunity with Axis in a very different sector, and some of the fundamentals that go into brand marketing, having a story that is you could that is authentic and relevant and forward thinking, being able to deliver messages that are digestible, whether you're in the financial sector or in the CPG space. Some of those fundamental principles hold true. I think there's part of what was exciting about Kind, and also MWW when I was there. I was part of with both organizations. I was part of a team that was really building something, and I think that same opportunity in a different setting is true for Axis. So I would say the common thread between all those experiences is being a part of a team that's really innovating and building. So that was what's been so exciting about this new opportunity for me.
All right, well, congrats on the new role. Thanks. I look forward to following how you're doing there and what you do to build that in harmony with Michiko. So, but
how much do you miss the free food?
You know, it was very nice having Kind bars on demand.
I bet that's a nice perk, isn't it?
And that was a great perk.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the things you notice about Kind, the distribution is amazing.
Yeah.
It's in Starbucks or what?
It still is. Yeah, they've I mean the team there is amazing, and yeah, the distribution effort is
because that's not easy from a startup,
No.
is it, to get into that? So they seem to
No.
be doing well. So
yeah, it's many years of blood, sweat, and tears.
yeah. All right, let's get into the sort of topical subjects. Frank, there was a little debate on Monday night.
There was 84 million people watched on 13 networks.
That's a record, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's not counting video, and it's not counting people who watch on the internet. So Super Bowl-like numbers, although not quite there. I think most people thought it was a win for Hillary Clinton, that she came off as much more organized, practiced, coherent, ready for the big stage, so to speak. But, you know, it's Donald Trump was involved, obviously, and he has his moments. I think he was strong early on things like trade. But towards the end, you could tell his attention definitely wavered a bit as it went on. Being kind there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No pun intended with your former employer.
Yeah, but in previous debates, the first 20, 30 minutes were crucial because that people tended to zone out after that.
Yeah,
but
the numbers say
it seemed to be that the people stuck with this one to the end, like an hour and 40 minutes.
In some ways, I'm not surprised by that. It was such a highly anticipated event that it's not surprising that people.
It's kind of interesting. I was flying out to Chicago that night, and as I went through, the debate was just starting. Every bar, the screen was tuned to the football. Monday Night Football, which Trump had mentioned, hadn't he? Don't put it up against that. So I was thinking, actually, I couldn't see a single screen with the debate on in the airport, but maybe that's just the airport demographic. But Yeah, what do you believe those polls? Because the Trump people are saying, well, it's the media reporting on the media and the media elite sort of being more liberal leaning,
No,
and
I
that
think
they
that
did
the
some polls,
reporting-
didn't they, that were
I think
very
that the
favourable to
reporting on the
Trump.
polls is normal and accurate. I mean, people who are professional pollsters, when they take into account things like how well represented demographics are and how well represented people from both parties are, and try to get an accurate sampling of the whole country. I mean, there's a lot of professionalism that goes into that, whereas online polls, you can game very easily just by voting over and over again, or a website can by, encouraging people to vote at this poll and that poll. So, I mean, yeah, there is definitely a higher level of professionalism with what you would get from Ipsos or the AP or NBC News and SurveyMonkey even, than there is with just the poll that might appear on NBCnews.com, for instance.
Yeah, that would never happen with the PRWeek.com
No,
poll, of course not.
of
But
course not, but-
yeah, it was. Hillary's numbers seem to have gone up actually since.
Yeah,
since
the early
Wednesday.
polling numbers have her up 5 to 6 points, which is I think about what people expected based on the performance.
One of the criticisms of Donald Trump was that he interrupted a lot. He interrupted her about 50 times, and he was quite, a little bit bullying in his demeanor. And there was the famous. Somebody did a film of it with the sound off, and you could kind of see from the dynamics even there that what was going on.
That was a New York Times article, and I think that was kind of amazing to read about somebody that actually watched the debate with the sound off and could just tell by the facial expressions how everybody was doing on the particular question. I think that was a really interesting read.
But then there was a little bit of criticism maybe of Hillary Clinton, that she became a little bit complacent, and towards the end of the debate she was kind of grandstanding a bit, and then in her follow-up appearances the next day, she seemed to. I'm not sure she slam dunked it quite as much as she might have been making out there. It didn't put Trump out of the race.
Well, listen, I think the country is so divided in and of itself that I'm not sure that you can see one candidate knock the other candidate out of a race in a debate like you might have been able to see, 30 years ago. But I think that she definitely won. I'm not sure it was the clear knockout that a lot of people have played it up to be. Of course, if I was one of her supporters, I'd be claiming it was a huge knockout, and his supporters are saying, well, people read it wrong and he actually won. But I think that the bump in the polls she's getting so far seems pretty normal based on the performance.
And you have to remember that the last election, Obama had a stinker in the first debate, didn't he? Against Romney. It really was, and then he came back and did really well in the last two and won fairly easily. So,
and of course, what's really entertaining are a lot of the background sources from the Trump campaign talking to the New York Times about his lack of debate preparation and his attention span and stuff like that, which makes for fun reading, unless you're supporting him, of course, when it wouldn't.
Yeah, can he change that? Can he change that? It's part of his character. It worked for him in the primaries. I don't know. What do you think, Joe? Can he change and prepare more? Because he's a good performer. He's done really well. He's knocked out a lot of experienced politicians. He's taking on a real opponent here. But can he change, and can he actually present that depth and the gravitas that people want from a president?
Well, it's interesting because part of what has and I want to express that these opinions are my own opinions, as any good communications professional would say. Part of what made Donald Trump, in my opinion, rise up so effectively is that he has a very simple, clear message that for certain audiences clearly has resonated. It's, I am a businessman, I am outside the establishment, our country is losing, I'm going to help us win. And he says that over and over again, and people believe it and get behind it. And then there's other, people also see other undertones that are very negative. Now, with a debate, in a debate where you have 18 people on the stage and then 10 people and then 3 people, you could get away with that. As it goes on over 90 minutes and you start digging in, you realize how repetitive and redundant it is. So now, lack of depth. So as far as Donald Trump goes, the question is he going to stay the course? Does he have the discipline to be able to study and come in and expand on that level of detail that he currently provides? I think that also part of what's interesting is you think about with debates, are you going to lose people or are you going to gain people? And you've got, with Trump and Clinton, you have I think most people agree. You've got two camps where you've got your Trump voters who are unlikely to shift, you have your Clinton voters who are unlikely to shift, and then you have some areas in the middle. And one of those is suburban moms. And I think that there's the depth of policy experience, and then there's also his temperament and the idea that is he a misogynist. And it was interesting watching the pundits break down the debate. And the interruptions came up, but you heard a lot about birtherism and what was his opinion on Iraq. But I think what has begun to come to the surface, which is really what I think is going to sway that undecided vote, is whether or not he is someone who is a misogynist towards women, and whether or not that comes across. And the idea of cutting off Hillary Clinton many times, the comments about Miss Universe. My own opinion is those were the issues that were the most damaging because it could turn off a lot of people. And then the comments, and then I think Clinton got in a number of effective barbs, especially as it went on. So it's so I think that my thought is with policy, that could affect some people. I expect that how he treats Clinton, I think that's going to have and his mood and temperament during the debate. I think that's going to have a lot of impact.
Yeah. I watched that thinking that Clinton had an advantage going in, if only because I think it's just hard to bluster for 90 minutes, even if you were as good at that as he is. And blustering for that amount of time is very hard. I think that second of all, you could tell he just lacks discipline in a lot of ways. And then even the morning after, he goes on Fox and Friends, which is about as favorable of a media outlet as he could possibly find. And just can't stop talking about this Miss Universe contestant, and you're watching it, and you're just kind of cringing watching it.
Communications 101, isn't it? Don't go there. I think there's still more to come. I think there's some areas he didn't double down on. There was not much on Benghazi or the Clinton Foundation or the emails. Even there wasn't a big part of the debate, and he was kind of desperate, wasn't he, to bring in Bill Clinton, and he was, you could see him almost straining at the leash. We'll see whether he actually does. I think that would be a mistake personally, but he might do that. Depends if he gets desperate. But yeah, it's great theatre. I'm not sure how good it is for our democracy, but we'll see how it pans out. It's the vice president's next, which might be a little drier, but interesting in its own right. So let's move on to some more PR-related issues. Frank, two fantastic stories broken by the PRWeek team this week. GM, the latest in its RFPs, has been decided, and a great win for M. Booth. And then HP has gone back with Edelman, chosen them for a big $14 million plus account. Talk us through those. Great stories by Diana Bradley.
Right, so the last the most recent in the General Motors briefs was Buick and GMC, which was won by M. Booth. Bit of a surprise since it's a little bit of a smaller firm than some of the agencies it had been working with on this account, which were MSL Group, Weber Shandwick, Fleischman Hillard, and a big win for M. Booth. Somebody over there told me the other day they were just over the moon, thrilled with it, celebrating winning this account. So
came out of left field. I didn't even realize they were in. Up for.
Yeah, well, I think in one way you could look at it and say that with the Chevrolet account, it wasn't surprising at all that they stuck with Weber Shandwick. They were clearly very happy with them. But they did go with more of a surprise firm, with the firm Covert for the Cadillac account, which was also a surprise. So Tony Cervone is doing some interesting things over there as far as picking agencies go. Yeah,
and it's Fleischman and MSL miss out again, so they will be putting all their hopes on. I think there's one more phase left of business to go for, which is big, a big part of the business. So we'll see how that goes, and more bad news for Omnicom in the HP deal with Porter Novelli and Fleischman Hillard.
That's right.
Getting knocked out of that.
And that's a big account, $14 million for the PR spend, but also $22 million when you incorporate other aspects of the contract into it. Big loss for the Porter Novelli Fleischman Hillard combo. Good win for Edelman. Interesting to see how that account is going to go forward when you consider where HP is in the market compared to where it used to be years ago. With the continued emergence of laptops. laptops, mobile devices, all of these things that didn't exist years and years ago when Edelman was on that account to begin with. So one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think it's a sign of the times as well, in that Edelman was in there doing social and digital work,
Yeah.
and obviously impressed, and then
Right.
managed to demonstrate that they could do the whole body of work.
And I should back up there. Of course, laptops existed the last time around, but there are a lot of new cloud technologies and a lot of mobile technologies that weren't around then.
Sure. And of course, there was the interesting subplot to that with HP sending out a diktat to all their agencies on diversity. And
Yes.
so obviously Edelman, Antonio Lucio, the CMO, Edelman must have passed those tests as well to win the account. But then I should say with GM, Fleischmann may not have won the communications part of the business, but they are still working with the marketing departments as far as I'm aware. So there is separate bodies of work now, and clients, agencies are dealing with CMOs as much as they are with CCOs. Joe, as someone who's been on both sides of that coin, if you like, what are your reflections on big pitches like that, and how was it going to the client side and seeing it from the other side, if you like?
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, clearly when you're one of the agencies pitching, the stakes are so high. And I think that with this specific pitch, I mean, so it's 3 agencies that are just fine agencies. And I think to your point, I think that when you have someone who already has a piece of the business and is held in high regard and has done clearly great work on social, like Edelman, that's something that when you're in the pitch, you're always looking to figure out what your you figure out what your advantage is and you max it. And it seems like social and diversity could have been 2 areas there where Edelman was able to really stand out above the competition. On the in-house side, what has something that I appreciate is you always see this trend towards consolidation. I actually like the idea of working with multiple agencies. I think it gives you different perspective. And just now we were talking about 3 global agencies that have a diverse range of offerings, but I think that when you are doing some very highly specialized campaigns, and as I was speaking about earlier, and as we were talking about, you have a very highly segmented media environment. You want people who have that extra area level of depth. So you could sometimes have a master global agency, but it's nice to have those smaller agencies and boutiques who know certain areas really, really well. So for me, I had kind of looked at it as one of those consolidation stories and thinking, well, I think in this instance, I could see why they did it. In some instances, consolidation isn't always the best approach.
Definitely a blow for Porter. I mean, they've been on our business for 28 years. So another little subplot actually was Vanessa Yanes, who's one of the executives at HP, had actually come over from Fleischmann on the West Coast fairly recently, and presumably was involved in the decision to pick Edelman. So that's an interesting little subplot too. Well, finally on this topic, what's your sort of best memory at the agency of a great win, and the opposite of that, what was the worst memory? Because you put so much into these pitches, don't you? The whole agency is kind of on it 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, Steve and Frank, I loved working at MWW. Clearly, I was there 15 years. I mean, I still talk to Michael frequently and many members of the team, and especially during those years when we were growing the agency from a company that wasn't a small firm, but was on the lower size than the mid-sized firm into really, we won your award, best in class mid-sized firm. I think that one of the wins that just stood out it was 2003. So it was during those years we were really building, was when we won the Palm Restaurant. And that was my first pitch where I played one of the lead roles. And it's just the sense, you spend so many late nights working 18, 20-hour days preparing. And at the end of that pitch, Fred Tim, who was at the time the president COO, came up to me and said, "I look forward to working with you." And then we all walked out and we're like, everyone's saying, "I wonder if we won it." And I was like, "Fred just said this to me." And I still look back on that as one of the best moments of my career. It was just thrilling and exhilarating, and that thrill of the competition is so much fun. And then on the flip side, when you lose business, it could be very extremely painful. And same thing. I mean, because you're selling the agency, you're selling yourself, you are working around the clock. So it's but I think that thrill of competition just makes the agency experience especially the pitch part of it, exhilarating. So that part of the agency experience, I think, is something that I'll always just have very vivid memories, both good and bad.
When you lose one, often the line just goes dead, doesn't it? There's no communication, and you're emailing or you're ringing, and you're not getting anything back from the client. Did you learn anything when you were a client from how to treat an agency that you maybe have decided not to choose?
Yeah.
In terms of that respect, the fact that they've put that effort in, that they've worked so hard. How did you, when you were on the client side, then treat the agencies when you were involved in pitches?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does go dead, but sometimes you'll also have people who will walk you through in details why you didn't get the business, which can be extraordinarily painful, but helpful, and that's what makes you grow.
Process.
And I had one situation, without naming the brand, where we just barely lost the business, and we wanted it, and it hurt. And then what wound up happening was we wound up working with them not that long thereafter, and I appreciated it. It said something about the client and the brand that they took time, had the conversation, offered learnings. So then being on the in-house side, that's something where having that conversation, which also isn't always fun on the on the client side or on the in-house side, walking people through why they didn't get the business. I think that it's healthy for everyone involved, and it can be done in a way that's tactful and respectful, and in the long run could really benefit everyone.
Yeah, and always stay in touch, because after 6 months it might not work out with the agency, and that's you often do get back in, don't you? Get the foot back in the door.
Well, I think also the PR industry is a very insular community, and odds are you're going to encounter people again. So besides the fact that it's just
your bridges.
don't burn your bridges. Besides the fact just being a good human being, a good professional, you don't want it. To your point, don't burn your bridges.
And look at Edelman; they came back in.
That's right.
Let's. We need to quickly finish up here. We're running out of time. Mike Fernandez, great professional, part of PRWeek's powerless, good friend of the brand. He was at Cargill. He did a great job there. He's moved back east to be close to his family, but he's landed up at Burson. So, Frank, great move for Mike, and also great
It's a
addition
great
for
pickup
Burson.
for Burson. Really impressive. Interesting that, again, the diversity story plays into this. And Mike mentioned when he talked to one of our reporters the other day how it's something that's near and dear to his heart. And so, again, the HP diktat to improve diversity at agencies, again playing into the story. Yeah,
great professional and great mentor to a lot of people. All right, yeah. Joe, thanks for being with us. It's been great to chat to you, and look forward to seeing what you do at Axis. And yeah, please keep in touch. Don't forget our awards. The first deadline for the PRWeek Awards is the 3rd of October. You can submit late to the 11th after Columbus Day, but you will have to pay an extra charge. But do make sure you've got all your work and all your entries ready. And don't forget our conference on the 13th, 2 weeks today. This is talking on Thursday. Great lineup of CEOs, CMOs, and it'll be followed by our 40 under 40 dinner. So big couple of weeks for PRWeek. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time on the PRWeek.